I think the worst wrestling match has to be one that doesn't just have some botches in it, or doesn't have the sort of wrong babyface heel dynamic, or doesn't even necessarily have to have wrestlers just kind of having off night. It has to be a match that breaks wrestling itself, and that is Seth Rollins versus The Fiend at Hell in a Cell 2019. 2019, what a year that was. Great if you're an AEW fan. If you're a WWE fan, not so much. It was very much, after several years of this, the sort of Simpsons, it's still good, there's still glimpses of stuff, and The Fiend was someone who, you know, Bray Wyatt, may he rest in peace, was someone who fans had always wanted to get behind, but WWE just couldn't work out what he was or what he was trying to do. And then he comes along as The Fiend. SummerSlam, I think, was his first match against Finn Balor, and it was perfect, from the entrance to the fact that Finn Balor was kind of in the ideal position to be sacrificed for this character. And then you thought, okay, what does he want to do next? What is The Fiend here for? Why is he here? And I almost would have been okay with it being that the weird, terrifying, supernatural character wants to win the world title if he just then gone on to immediately win the world title. You didn't have to immediately insert him into a world title match if you didn't want to take it off Seth Rollins at Hell in a Cell. And emblematic of the latter days of Vince McMahon, they booked the match and then they didn't have a bloody clue. I don't blame it on either of the wrestlers. They didn't have a bloody clue what they were trying to do in there. The Fiend's going to kick out of 12 stomps. Fine, okay, he's unbeatable. Seth's going to hit him with everything he can find under the ring, including comedy-sized hammers and things like that. Okay, I suppose that's got notice for some people. Hit him in the head with a sledgehammer, with a ladder on his head and the sledgehammer, fine. Involve a toolbox in it, whoa, that is too far. In the history of Hell in a Cell, where a man has been thrown off the roof and the match continued, that was where they drew the line. It destroyed Seth Rollins in his role and immediately undercut him completely, because he had to kind of go out and defend it with the fans, and you see that footage of him walking through and the crowd booing him and him kind of being like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And to add insult to injury, in the end, after this absolute debacle, they just went, just put this title on The Fiend. Well, if you're going to do that anyway, do it here. Have him just be unbeatable in Hell in a Cell and then beat Seth Rollins. Or, if you just want to have The Fiend in a Hell in a Cell match, don't put him against the world champion then! Then you don't have to do some shenanigans, ruin Hell in a Cell as if it wasn't dead already.
It's getting broken again.
And, you're right, I'm going back to an old version of me that I said wouldn't come out again. It's just terrible. No one's ever going to go back and watch this. And I'm just sorry for everyone involved.
Right. Well, the worst wrestling match might not be Brock Lesnar versus Roman Reigns from WrestleMania 34, but of course we put that title there to bait you into thinking it might be anyway. To me, it feels like the worst because it is my worst memory from WWE's worst time, ultimately. A reflection more than anything I could think of how the business, as we knew it at the time, was completely in the bin. Certainly on a mainstream level, certainly in what was my favourite reflection of it. Look, Roman Reigns had at this point 3 WrestleMania main events to become the babyface that WWE had desperately wanted him to be. There was the first Brock Lesnar match, which was an absolute blast, capped off by Seth Rollins cashing in. There was WrestleMania 32 against Triple H that had Triple H in it. But WrestleMania 33 was possibly the worst of them all up to that point. The dead man having one of his worst nights, a night that even he would concede was so shameful that he constantly tried to chase the dragon of not just paying back the fans, but paying back Roman Reigns for such a bad night at the office. But none of those compare to what happened at WrestleMania 34. It wasn't just a bad match that was badly agented, just finisher after finisher after finisher. Brock Lesnar busting open Roman Reigns with that vicious elbow opening the brain thing that they preferred to blading, apparently, because it was less barbaric. It was the fact that the fans hated it before the bell rung. The fans didn't want to see Roman Reigns win, nor did they particularly want to see Brock Lesnar, because at this point he was at his kind of mercenary worst. And the main thing they were protesting was the idea that Roman was going to win. And they put Brock Lesnar over anyway. So after fans had booed and booed and booed, and that hum had cut across this entire waste of everybody's time, the result went the way nobody would have expected anyway. Infamously, Brock Lesnar hated this just as much. There's that footage of him throwing the belt at Vince McMahon as he walks through a gorilla, only to be challenged by Shane McMahon, the boy wonder. Roman Reigns with his head caved open and his brain half hanging out around his children, wondering what the hell he's ever going to do to get over in this organisation. There were many rock bottoms creatively in that last 20 years of Vince McMahon's run as the creative czar of WWE, but this is the one that sticks out to me. No match should define what pro wrestling is more than the main event of WrestleMania, and it had never been further away from the very definition of it.
How does anyone sit down and put down like pen to paper by going, what can we do for a match? Let's have a cage match. But what's better than that? What if we put a cage match inside a Hell in a Cell match? And then, right, get this. What if we put dogs on the outside? So if people kind of get out of the cage, then they get savaged by dogs, and then they've got to get back in the ring to do wrestles. And then you put it all together with Al Snow. And why? Why did anyone think this was going to be a good thing? Like, how is this? What person's brain works where they just, Vince McMahon, yeah, that's you just answered it right there. But it's like, yeah, this is going to be a great match. It's so dumb, it's so stupid. You end up with just the dogs sniffing each other's asses and pissing and shitting outside, humping at one point, and like all of the drama is completely pointless because they're not savage dogs, obviously. They're not going to have dogs savage their wrestlers. They just kind of come up and sniff them occasionally. And then like, yeah, and everything about it, the whole point of it was like the drama of, oh no, the dog's gonna get me and get back into the ring. It just wasn't dramatic in any way, shape or form. It was dumb. It was the dumbest thing you could possibly ever put on TV. And yet it was very much sold as a real life, like, this is huge high stakes match in the build up to it. It was incredible. And I kind of want to go watch it now.
So if you're a wrestling fan, it's kind of part of the deal that you are going to see some bad wrestling. At times you're going to see some bad matches, and more often than not you'll just forget about them, because we watch a lot of wrestling. If you really are immersed in this world and you love it so much, you're going to watch an awful lot, and a lot of like the bad stuff's just going to get like washed away by all the good stuff. That's just the way it works. But every now and again there's a match that's so bad it sticks in your head and you cannot shake it. It's just always there, and it's almost like a reminder of, like, even if you think something's bad now, it's not that bad. Like that's the real bad, and this is just like that's serious bad. And for me, that match, that's Vince McMahon versus Pat McAfee at WrestleMania 38, because that was something else. And that is a match that you think you remember how bad it is, and then you go back and rewatch it, and I did for this lovely video right here, and it's even worse. It's just uncomfortable, and like you forget as well that like there was the whole Theory Pat McAfee match before that, which was fine. It was like a good little match for what it was, and then it just gets weird. Like Vince gets brought into the ring, and like they like, I think McAfee gets jumped by Theory, and it's like a weird 2-on-1 situation. But then McAfee's seriously selling for this creepy old man, like taking clotheslines, getting thrown all over the ring, and Vince is in like a tank top and like weird muscle. It's really hard to watch, obviously for a lot of reasons now, but even then it was. I remember them being like, what is this weird thing I'm watching right now? And then it all ends with Vince kicking a ball at McAfee for the win, as you do, and not even Stone Cold Steve Austin coming down to the ring, like his glass shattering, and come down like stunning everyone, could fix this. If anything, it made it worse, because he gave Vince the worst stunner in stunning history. It was anything but stunning. It was awful. It was just so bad, and it's not a moment that's going to be replayed in WWE history, like for the years to come, for very obvious reasons again, but it's just so bad. And like, no, I don't even want you to go back and watch it to see how bad it is. It's one of those, just save yourself. Just accept that it's a bad old time and never go back. There was one little glimmer of goodness, if you want to call it that, in it, and that was Austin Theory's incredible stunner cell. That was really good, and McAfee did what he could in everything, but it's just bad. It's just very bad. It's the worst wrestling match that I've ever seen in my life, and now after I've spoken about it for so long, I'm never going to watch it again. I'm going to treat myself and never watch it again.
Well, it's one final beat. It's Johnny Gargano versus Tommaso Ciampa, their final big singles match in NXT. I almost didn't include this one because while I think it is the worst wrestling thing I've ever watched, I'm actually quite reticent to call it a match. It happened in a ring. There was a beginning and an end, and that's about the extent to which you can call it a wrestling match. Look, It was the pandemic. WWE experimented with a lot of what was the word? Cinematic matches, and we all had our fun with various versions. The Firefly Funhouse was like a really fun deconstruction of John Cena as a human being and a character in WWE. Look, the Boneyard match, if you're into the dead man, even ironically, was a lot of fun. Yeah. And there was some other bits and pieces here. Look, who can ever forget the all-time classic of Ivar getting eaten by a bin monster? Right? Great moments, good times, great memories, as Colt Cabana would say. This is the shitter classic. This is the Madam Web of wrestling matches. This is the Room, if you will, of wrestling matches. It's Metallica and Lou Reed's Lulu. The whole point of storytelling, the golden rule of storytelling, is show, don't tell. The idea being that you demonstrate what is going on in the story without explicitly telling people what is going on, so that they can use their imaginations and they can engage with it and they can connect with it and go, that just happened there. It's not turning to the character and explaining story beats. It's not staring at your hands and wondering, why am I so violent? It's not overly contrived low blow spots where you pull out a cup and Candice is there. It's not Triple H sitting in the corner like this at the beginning of it, like the hardest man alive. It's not the creepiest man in the world as the referee. To me, these matches that are always like really overly edited and cut together and are blatantly like, you know, multiple shots, multiple takes, a bit like Randy Orton and Edge, the greatest wrestling match of all time. That's not a wrestling match. Wrestling to me has to be live and in the moment. This was not that. This was a drama production, acted out at the standard of a low-level community theatre. And you kind of see entrails of this match today. That's not to say that Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa revolutionized the current house style, but I hate this idea that wrestling needs to take its plot points and batter you over the head with them over and over and over again with the Fiend's big bloomin' hammer. I wish wrestling didn't take its audience for complete morons so often. I wish wrestling put a bit of trust in people's intelligence and their ability to understand things by themselves. This match is the opposite of that. It is anti-wrestling, it is anti-storytelling. It is one of the worst things I have ever seen. And if you don't believe me, this is a match that Michael Hamflett, the biggest WWE fan I know, said caused him to hate something that he loved. It killed something that he loved. Look, if you're into this kind of thing, that's totally cool. We just have different tastes. I'm sure you're a nice person, but we have nothing in common wrestling-wise. This was a war crime, and I'm going to watch it as soon as we finish.
Underrated, in my opinion.
Shut up, man.
The worst WWE match ever. I mean, it's not the worst WWE match ever, but I wanted to pick something that nobody else was going to talk about on this video. So I will go with SummerSlam 2010. I always get it confused. I'm pretty sure it was 2010. The Nexus, or Team Nexus versus Team WWE. And there's just so many things that annoy me about it. Now, obviously, the big one is the finish. Even people like Chris Jericho and Edge, Adam Copeland, I'm sure have come out and said that they also thought it was silly for John Cena to win. And I don't mind John Cena winning, but it was the way he won. Like, he gets pile driven or DDT'd into the concrete, and then Justin Gabriel goes after him and he gets taken out instantly. Then Wade Barrett goes after him, he gets taken out instantly. And essentially John Cena takes out the entirety of Team Nexus by himself, even though he does have a group. And it just murdered the entire squad of the Nexus, who were doing so well ever since they had debuted. And listen, there was way too many people in that group for them all to be stars, so I'm not saying that, I totally get it. But Wade Barrett, at the very least, I think had the potential to be a world champion. Like, I really do think that. Maybe I'm biased because I'm from the UK, but I do not think so. I think there was a reason he was put in charge of the Nexus. But as soon as their big MO, their mission had totally failed at the first hurdle, it was one of those times where people are like, what was the point? I can't get invested in you now. And it sucked for Wade Barrett, of course, because he went and became Bad News Barrett, which became hilarious, and they pulled the rug out of under his legs again. So, yeah, I always look back at that match because, again, they fire Daniel Bryan because of the whole choking Justin Roberts thing. It's not actually that big a deal when you look back at it. Bryan Danielson was more than happy to go back to the indie scenes, but it's when he got his job back too, because again, it was mostly done just to calm things down, which I can understand. But to put him on Team WWE was just wild, and it made the story so confusing because the Nexus, they were almost a group because they felt like they were being held down by their main roster and they weren't getting the opportunities. And now all of a sudden he's jumped ship in like 2 months. And then, listen, Bret Hart is my favourite wrestler ever. I love Bret Hart, but putting him in those kind of situations I just thought was unfair to him. I don't think we used him in the best possible way. So, yeah, it could have been one of those moments where we really had a shift in WW programming. We built some new stars. I think Wade Barrett versus John Cena done right could have been an awesome feud. And instead, we just got to the big match, which it was, because it was SummerSlam, Hot WrestleMania, and we just ended it. And it was kind of like, I suppose, from a fan's point of view, you're like, why did I invest these last couple of months? Like, what was the point of all of that? And then you get the new Nexus and the core spelled with 2 R's, because apparently Heath Slater misspelled it when he went to the trademark office. I don't know how true that is, but I like that story. And it was, 14 years ago now. And I just think it could have been a thing that we had for a year to 18 months. And instead, really, within a few months, it was over and done with. And because there was so much potential there, especially because of the debut, they just destroyed John Cena and Raw. It's just a little bit disappointing.
On an execution and, more importantly, philosophical basis, the idea of the Triple H deathly quiet WrestleMania 25-minute match is my least favourite part of wrestling. He didn't earn it. We know why he got those matches. After the first 1, 2, 3 totally uber silent disasters, there's been Orton. It could be this, it could be anything. Orton, Lesnar, Jericho, to a lesser extent, Seth, Batista. These 25-minute matches about which nobody in the stadium cares. It's only because it was the power that he wielded that he was able to get into these slots. And I've picked the Orton match at 25 in particular. This is the biggest match of the year. It's the main event of WrestleMania. At a minimum, right? At a minimum, it should be noisy. I mean, taste can be subjective, and it pretty much all is, right? Action can be slow, plodding, methodical, intense, high-flying, whatever, as long as it works for the audience. The story can be frivolous, deathly serious, as long as it works for the audience, right? It cannot be this silent. It's not allowed. If it was any other wrestler without the connections, working a match that objectively unpopular in the stadium, that person would not headline WrestleMania ever again, realistically. The amount of chances he got because of who he is. I just thought, philosophically, it was a disgrace. I've picked this one out of the reams of other options and alternatives because Triple H in 2000, a spectacular heel. He has, subsequent to that great year, entered incredible heel performances, even at WrestleMania against Daniel Bryan, okay? The idea that this match was premised on babyface Triple H, which was an oxymoron and never really worked, even to WWE fans, right? The idea, the premise, the story that you were meant to invest in was Triple H, if he, was violent or bent the rules, he would get disqualified. The idea that about 50, 65,000 fans in that audience were meant to go, oh, come on, Triple H, you're better than that. Don't resort to Randy Orton's tactics. You're my hero. I believe in you. Not only do I want you to win, I want you to do it in the right way. Did anyone think that 65,000, we have conversations about everything's subjective. There's no such thing as objectivity. I mean, fundamentally that is true, okay? It is. I'm not stupid, I know that's true, but, you can take it to the opposite extreme. Say there's 60,000 people in that building. No one gave a toss about the story being told. It's objectively a disgrace.
The worst match ever of all time. That certainly covers quite a vast amount of ground. But for me, if you're looking on a mainstream level, it's really tough to look past the finger poke of doom, if you even want to call that a match. Because I think it's a minute and 41 seconds. But to set the stage for this was a time when Hulk Hogan had just announced his retirement. Ric Flair had become WCW president. It was less than a week after Goldberg's undefeated streak was ended by Kevin Nash at Starrcade 98. And this was a Nitro taking place at Atlanta's famed Georgia Dome in front of 40,000 rabid fans who were promised they'd see Goldberg and Kevin Nash rematch for the world title. Quite the big show, right? Instead, Goldberg was arrested after Miss Elizabeth accused him of being a sexual deviant. Yes, that really happened, leading to Kevin Nash as the fighting champion babyface demanding a match against Hulk Hogan. Before then, he'd fight Goldberg that same night after Goldberg had been cleared by the police. So yeah, Nash was going to pull double duty, fight Hogan, then fight Goldberg. He would be cleared of his charges. Of course, Hogan accepted that, came out of retirement, I guess, essentially, came to the ring with Scott Steiner. Nash was joined by Scott Hall, and we got a minute or so of stalling before Hogan poked his finger into Big Sexy's chest, Kevin Nash took a hell of a bump, and Hulk Hogan pinned him for the 1, 2, 3 and to win the world title as the NWO Elite form, which was Hulk Hogan, Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, Eric Bischoff, Scott Steiner, Buff Bagwell, Lex Luger, and of course Miss Elizabeth. Now, the Finger Poke of Doom, that was also where Tony Schiavone mocked Mick Foley winning the WWF title on a pre-taped Raw on the other channel. That'll put butts in seats, remember? Which it actually did, as over 500,000 people immediately turned over from Nitro to Raw. Despite all of this daftness, Nitro lost out to Raw in the ratings on that 4th of January 1999 night, and unsurprisingly, Nitro never beat Raw even one more time before WCW was bought out in 2001. And part of that was down to stupid shit like this. So, worst match of all time? Given how it played a part in WCW's ultimate demise, the Finger Poke of Doom has to be right up there.